This is going to be a short one today. I'm speaking to you about a topic that I think is important and that's been on my mind for a little while. I'm doing it without slides, the slides that would normally be appearing right here. And I'm just going to speak to you from the heart today for a few minutes about a topic that um, not a lot of you have been asking about, but which I do think sometimes is in the ether. It's on people's minds. It's been on my mind, which is, are people still buying books? And are people still going to be buying books, particularly smart, informative, engaging, nonfiction books of the kind that you all are trying to write, trade books as academics? Um, that's a question that I think is haunting a lot of us. Is are we living in a culture with a short attention span where people just don't buy books like this anymore? And what does that mean for all of us? If you don't already know me, my name is John Gazvinian. I'm the founding director of Scholars to Storytellers, where we help senior academics in the humanities and social sciences, just like you, reach wider audiences and publish books with trade presses. We help you find an agent. We help you get from a concept to an agent-ready proposal within a short amount of time and get your ideas out into a hungry reading public. So today's topic: are people still buying books? Will they still buy books? I think they will, and I'm here to give you a fairly optimistic message today, because I know how it feels sometimes. We're out there. It feels like people aren't really reading books. Like they're not even reading magazine articles anymore. They're not even. I mean, people aren't even reading blogs anymore. That's difficult. Sometimes it feels like anything more than about a sentence is too much for people to absorb. Um, I'm here to tell you that I think you need to kind of take a breath and not let that kind of thing concern you too much. And here's why. First of all, books have always been something that most people don't read. We sometimes have this nostalgic, rosy view of the past, this idealized past in which everyone was sitting around in the evening reading intelligent books, sitting by the fireplace. Yeah. I don't know that time has ever really existed. As academics, and particularly as people who are sort of intellectuals or interested in big, smart ideas and reading big, interesting books, we are naturally geared to think that the society is constantly dumbing down. And it is, frankly. I mean, I'm not here to tell you that it's not. I mean, we all see the same thing. Um, it is harder to keep people's attention spans. There's no question about that. But here's the thing. People who like to read these kinds of books still exist. They're not going anywhere. People like this. You probably have people like this in your neighborhood, in your families, among your friend groups, people who are not academics, who don't have PhDs, who don't understand or care about your jargon, but who like to read books, who like to read interesting history books, interesting books about politics, about literature, about art history, about culture, about travel. Um, those people have always read books and they're always going to read books. And that's something I'm going to tell you right now. I keep hearing from the publishing industry. This is a very sophisticated industry. They're not burying their heads in the sand. They recognize the headwinds. We all see the same headwinds. But they're still doing fine. Books are still selling. Um, I think, again, it's tempting to look at the trends towards, TikTok and disinformation and, social media and blah, 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 and to think people aren't reading. But let's just remember that 10 years ago, before it was TikTok, it was Facebook, or 15 years ago, let's say. We were concerned that social media was going to shorten our attention spans and make us less interested in serious ideas. And yet people still buy books. They bought books and they're still buying books. Yes, including intelligent, serious works of nonfiction. 20 years ago, it was the internet or 25 years ago, and email, and people are going to stop reading books because now they can get onto these things called websites. And why would anyone bother reading books? Well, guess what? People still bought books, and they are still buying books. 30 years ago, it was cable TV, and videos and movies and video games and things like that. Again, people still bought books. People are still buying books. Before cable TV, it was television generally, right? And before that, it was magazines. Before that, it was the radio. And before that, frankly, a lot of people were illiterate. So I don't know where this golden age exists, where people, there was a culture of book reading. That I'm not sure that's ever really existed in the way that I think we are sometimes inclined to believe. Um, the same people, yes, you're right. It is absolutely true that the vast, vast majority of people in today's dumbed down culture don't read books, and they are not interested in reading 500-page books, 300-page books that are about some serious nonfiction topic. You're absolutely right if you're worried about that. But guess what? They weren't 20 years ago either, or 30 years ago, or 50 years ago, or 100 years ago. Um, Again, this audience that you're writing to has always been a relatively small one, and it will always be a relatively small one. But guess what? It still exists, and it still exists enough to support the fundamental economics of the publishing industry. Reading books, highbrow books like this, has always been a sort of elite pastime. And that doesn't mean that you need to write for an elite audience. In fact, if anything, quite the opposite. One of the things we're always trying to get you to do here is to make your work more accessible, more readable, more light in touch. But you don't need hundreds of millions of people to buy your book. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but a successful trade book sells like 10,000 copies. That's great if you've done that. That's going to make you in the mid five figures, if not in the six figures. And I know, again, even if you're not concerned about the money, it's what that money represents. The point is, you're going to sell a lot of books. You're going to reach a lot of people. That's a successful trade book. 10,000 people in North America. You do the maths, right? What fraction of a percentage of the population is that? So again, even if 20% fewer people are reading books like that, like, how much of a real dent are we talking about, right? Yes, the economics are maybe not what they were in the 80s or 90s, but this is not something you need to worry about if that's on your mind. And added to that, there's some green shoots that you can feel good about, which is that even as recently as 50 years ago, a lot of the world's population, especially in the developing world, was actually still illiterate. Literacy has increased in the developing world, and especially, most importantly for us, English language literacy has increased in many parts of the world. So you're not just writing for Americans anymore in the way that you might have been a couple of generations ago. So to some extent, that offsets some of the long-term macro trends that you might be concerned about. Now, let me also say a quick word about AI. This video is mostly about, will people still buy books? But I also know that there may be a concern about, well, with AI, I mean, if people just go out and they can just type something. If they just want to read something, they can get AI to download some fascinating, interesting, entertaining thing for them to read. Yes, again, we're all aware of these headwinds, and we need to be aware. We need to not lose sight of them. We need to think about not just today, but 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. My prediction, let me first say this. No one has any idea what's going to happen with AI, least of all me. And anyone who sits there telling you this is what's going to happen is probably lying to you or trying to sell you something. I would like to do, well, I'm not lying. I'm not lying to you. Of course, I'm trying to sell you something. But I'm not going to sit here and make a prediction about AI that I'm going to go to the bank with, right? But everything I'm hearing about AI and everything I'm seeing, and I've been, kind of looking into this for the past few months pretty closely and talking to people in the industry. I don't think we need to worry too much about at least the next 3 to 5 years. And the reason I say that is because, again, people are still buying books. People still value books written by human beings. And there are things that AI cannot do and will not be able to do in the next 3 to 5 years. Now, 10 years from now is a different story. 15 years from now, I don't know. But here are things that AI can do and can't do. Right now, obviously, AI can produce pretty decent, serviceable text for people to read and to learn about things. Yes. And sure, AI could write a book that many people might not be able to distinguish from one of your books. But we all know, if you've used AI, AI is absolutely not at a point right now where it can do that very well. It makes tons of mistakes. It's sloppy. It doesn't have the deep knowledge base that you're going to bring to this to the topic. Now, I can already hear you saying, sure, but what about 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Yes, I think there is a real danger, yes, that 3 to 5 years from now, AI could write pretty damn good nonfiction books. But here's why I don't want you to worry too much, or rather, why I want you to retool what you're doing with that in mind. To me, that is not an argument for abandoning writing a trade book as an academic. In fact, if anything, it's the opposite. It is more of an argument because here's what AI will soon be very, very good at doing. And I think anyone can see this. Writing, if you're talking about writing a book that is lifeless and factual, that just answers basic questions about what happened when, AI can already do a kind of okay job of that. And in about 3 to 5 years, it's going to be able to do a pretty good job of that. So you need to stop writing books like that. Because the kind of book that AI cannot write, and I think will not be able to write for at least another decade or so, is a book that is based on deep research of the kind that you cannot do using large language models. In other words, let's say you are someone who is doing a book about the lives of people who cross the US-Mexico border. Can AI really go down there and talk to people and bring their stories to life? No. Right? It could make stuff up, of course, but it's not going to be able to do that kind of ethnography, right? That kind of real human touch anytime soon. Which is why it's so important that you do that when you write. That's why, as far as I'm concerned, making that transition from scholar to storyteller is more important today because of AI than it ever has been. I do believe that. The more you can bring a human touch, a storytelling touch, one that actually engages in some meaningful way with a painting or a story or a set of letters that have not been digitized or whatever it might be, the more you are bringing value that AI cannot bring. The more you are able to take the individuals that you're writing about in your book and turn them into memorable characters, because you've actually met them and spent time with them and interviewed them, the more you're doing something that AI cannot do. So think about that. Because why am I talking about this? How does that relate to the topic of will people still read books? Because those are the kinds of books people still want to read. Because they recognize that those books are not written by a machine. They're written by someone who has years, decades of scholarly experience and is making the transition to actually writing in a human, humane way, and interacting with the real life and stories behind the subject that they're writing about. That's the skill set you need to cultivate today. If you're worried about whether people are still reading books or whether you're worried about people's attention spans being short. Yes, people are sick and tired. Their attention spans are already very short. Yes, and they're not really interested in reading or having machines talk to them for the most part. We all recognize that that's a tool, that's a door you walk through, but it's not a destination. It's not a house you live in. The house people want to live in is one where they read beautiful, transcendent, inspiring books written by amazing writers who have done the work and who've gone and talked to people and have actually delivering the humanity in their story to us. That may be something AI can do, but I don't think it's going to be able to do in the next 3 to 5 years and do it well and do it accurately and do all those things. So as far as I'm concerned, if you're serious about doing the trade book, now is the time more than ever. If you want to sit around and wait, yes, eventually AI will eat your lunch. And you could say, well, why should I even bother? But then the question is, why should you bother with anything at all? Why should you bother writing your academic books? If you're writing books that simply synthesize pre-existing theories and historiography or whatever, AI is going to be able to do that pretty soon. So shape up, snap up, bring the life to your story, bring the humanity to your story, and you will be surprised just how long people will still be reading your books. Don't let that stand in your way. If you're interested in what we talked about today, check us out, scholars2storytellers.com, and please get in touch. And please disagree with me if you want.